All right, from now onwards, we actually are not working on straight lines that you did in the beginning of the school year, which is linear functions. We are completely done with exponential functions as well, which were the curved lines. So now you actually have the third type of equations that you learn in Algebra 1. And they are called quadratic equations or quadratic functions. Now, what are quadratic equations? You actually have them on reference chart as well, so it's not that hard or difficult to see the difference. This whole section is linear, and quadratic is that last bottom section. So quadratic equations, you have two different types that you actually do. You have the standard, and then you have the vertex form, and then you also do the factors form, which is you already have done by the X puzzle method. You make the factors. Quadratic equations are when f of x or y equals ax squared. This is the big difference. Now you actually have a squared. This is quadratic. Plus bx plus c are called quadratic functions. Why I'm calling it a function? Because equation is written as f of x, which means it's a function. So this is a quadratic function. Again, these are squared. S-Q-U-A-R-E-D, squared. So goal for today is we are just going to have the introduction of the graphs of quadratic functions. That means we are going to identify the key attributes. Attributes means features or properties, like attributes of a person or human being is or could be eyes, nose, ears, hands, feet, something like that. So quadratic functions also have the attributes, which are X-intercept, Y-intercept, zeros, maximum value, minimum value, vertex, and equation of the axis of symmetry. So these are the basic or the key attributes that you actually learn in the Algebra 1. Now the good part is, if you can see them, you can identify them. You just need to know where they are. So some of you, these you actually are familiar with, because you have seen them in the straight lines and you have also seen them in the exponential functions. So they remain the same. Starting with y-intercept. Where's the y-intercept? When the graph crosses the y-axis. So that point. What is a zero of a function? Zero of a function when the graph crosses the x-axis. So in this case, since quadratics are U-shaped, quadratic functions, oh, I missed the other blank. The graph of a quadratic function has a shape of a U. It's a shape of a U. So these are U-shaped, or they could be N, but mainly it's a U shape. So this graph is a U shape. So you might see 2 zeros, 1 0, or no zero, or X-intercept. Minimum means lowest, so that's the lowest point of the graph. Vertex, again, is the highest or the lowest point, so this graph actually has the bottom or the lowest point, so that's the vertex, and then I just write the order pair. Axis of symmetry is where it's just like the mirror image, or the mirror line, or a line that cut this parabola into two equal halves. So you want to write that down over here as well. The graph of a quadratic function has a shape of U and is called a parabola. You might see here or read that word as well. Parabola, it's a word together, but it's P-A-R-A-B-O-L-A, parabola. Vocabulary definition, so you need to know these words. The locations where the graph crosses the x-axis. That's your clue. You're crossing the x-axis, has to be X-intercept. or the point where the y coordinate is 0, because if you know, x-axis will have the x value and the y value would be 0. You will have a number here on the x, and then the y value will be 0, because that's how the x-intercept goes. Now, x-intercept actually has 3 other names. First one you already know, which is 0. The other one that you are going to learn more about is called solution or solutions. And what else? So the keyword, I actually have to use a keyword. I'm going to write over here, rocks, roots. So that's the keyword that helps me remember as well. What are the x-intercepts? So x-intercept basically are roots. This is 0. This means x-intercept. And S is solution. So these are the words. Roots, zeros, solutions, x-intercepts. They could be 1, 0, or 2 in the case of quadratic equations. The location where a graph crosses the y-axis was your clue that they're talking about y-intercept. At the y-intercept, the value of the x is 0 because y carries a number. It should be 0, some number. This is the highest or the lowest point of the graph. Highest or the lower point. They're talking about the point, and when it comes to math, point actually is an order pair or coordinate, which is x, y. So they're talking about the vertex, because vertex is x, y. That should be the point. Next, the vertical line that passes through the vertex and separate the graph into 2 equal parts. It goes through the center, or I'm going to call it middle of the graph. So it's the line. It's usually dotted because it's invisible, or dashed because it's invisible. So this passes through the vertex and it's exactly in the middle. This is called axis of symmetry. AXIS, axis of symmetry. Symmetry means the part that cuts a shape into 2 equal halves. And the other thing that I want to point out over here is call it X is of symmetry or X is, because when you're going to write down the value of axis of symmetry, you basically write X equals or X is. So over here in this graph, the middle line was X equals 3, because the X equals 3, this line is cutting the parabola or this graph into 2 equal halves. So X is. X is. That's the way you can memorize. The y coordinate of the vertex represents the highest or the lowest value in the range, minimum or maximum. And it's obvious that if it's lowest point, then it is minimum. And if it is highest point, then it is maximum, because highest means maximum. Your highest score is 100. Your maximum score is 100. They both are the same things. So this is actually very easy. All you have to do is identify these things and then you're done. So I'm going to show you both of these 2 examples, and I'm going to let you these 2 on your own. And we have some other questions as well afterwards, after this practice. X-intercept are here. X-intercept is 1 and -3. So I'm going to write as +1, 0. This is 1. and the other one is negative 3, 0, because I should have the x values. This is the x-intercept of this graph. Zeros, if you remember zeros, these are the rocks or the x-intercepts. So zeros values are 1 and negative 3. So 1 and negative 3, write it like that. Y-intercept, this graph crosses the y-axis at negative 3. So this is the y-intercept, 0, negative 3 value. You're going to write like that. Vertex is that point which is either the highest or the lowest. So this one is actually vertex. And it is a point, so it's going to have both x and y values. So x over here is negative 1 and y over here is negative 4. All I'm doing is reading a graph. You just need to remember where these things are. Maximum or minimum. Okay, let's look at the graph. Its highest or lowest point, this is at the bottom. So this one should actually have the minimum, because I said the word, it has a bottom, it is minimum. So this is the lowest point of this graph. So this one is, it has a minimum value, and the minimum value is y equals negative 4, because that's the lowest point of this graph. Y equals negative 4. Axis of symmetry. Let's cut this graph into 2 equal halves passing through that lowest point. This is axis of symmetry. And axis of symmetry is x is, I'm going to write x is, or x equals negative 1. And you are going to write like that so you actually remember. So this one is done. You actually can try the other one on your own. It's not that difficult. X-intercept. Oh, this graph, look at that. It only has 1, because this point is the one that is either passing or touching the x-axis. This is your x-axis, this is your y-axis. So this basically is the x-intercept. X-intercept, this should be 2, 0. 0, again, is rocks. That means it is again the x value, which is x equals 2, and it has only single 0, because this graph passes or touches x-axis only once. The one on the top has actually 2 zeros. Y-intercept, this graph is passing the y-axis over here at negative 4, so 0, negative 4. If you notice, let me help you. X-intercept means I have the x value. Y-intercept means I have the y value. Vertex is the highest or the lowest point. In this graph, it is actually the highest point because this is the top. So it is the topmost point. On the above, it was the actually lowest point or bottom point. The value of y over there is 0 because it is just on the axis. This is 0 over here, y. This graph is upside down, this is downward, so it actually has the maximum. You can see it has the highest most point. You can see it has the highest most point. It has a maximum, and that maximum point is basically 0, 2, same as vertex. Oh, and then you write actually as, not like this, you write as y equals 0. And the vertex, I'm going to write as order pair. This is the vertex is the point, top point. So you're going to write 0, 2. Axis of symmetry, x is it cuts into equal halves at this point, 2, or x equals 2.